in this life. So this is one of those coins where really when I was reading about this myself, I honestly, it really brought me to my knees. This one in imitation, when I was doing that this summer, because I was thinking of my behaviors that I was doing in front of my kids, and I was thinking, wow, some of this is probably not good modeling, and I just have to be honest with that. But the important thing about modeling is that, and I would substitute model and example right at the same level. Examples tell us where to set our heart, and that's why they're important. Examples tell us where to set our heart on good things or not so good things. And really, when we think about modeling, we always think that a leader, we think of leadership, we think of maturity, someone who's mature is able to do this. But also leaders are willing not to do things. And I think that's a big transition in life when we want to do things, we want to be this person, but then I also have to deny myself certain things sometimes too for the sake of someone else. And I think that's where maturity really comes in, is knowing who's around you and who can handle things, who can't, and that you're constantly kind of being called to this higher standard, and not in a legalistic way at all. I don't want to say that at all, that there's certainly, you know, but we're going to get into this game of what I do and what I don't do, but just the sensitivity that our example does matter. And I put in the study this week, there was a man that was talking about being a Christian leader, and quite frankly, all of us kind of bristle at that a little bit, like, ooh, I don't know if I want to be a leader because that's going to call me to this higher standard. But yet really accepting that responsibility is where you're going to become more mature in your faith. It's where God's going to take you to this new place. And so it can be an intimidating thing and a scary thing, but it's a great thing. It's a place of maturity. I also liked the scripture that a disciple is not above his teacher, and everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. I thought that was really interesting, that somebody, a younger believer, when you set that example in front of them, they're going to learn from that teacher. And so ultimately, the greatest teacher was Jesus. So he's ultimately who we're modeling and who is our example. So I brought for this one, first of all, we're going to do examples of what not so great models might look like. And I'm going to reuse this one. Are we, well, no, I'm not going to use that one. Are we just big goobers? Are people looking at our behavior and like, gosh, she's such a goober. Like, get over it. Stop whining. You're always being a goober. Hold on. Ready? It gets worse. Are we Sour Patch Kids and just like bad attitude? You're acting like a child. This can be me before my first cup of coffee in the morning. So Sour Patch Kids. Okay, this one's funny. Nerds. I mean, come on. Like, are you just... being a nerd, I think of the person that, or like myself, when I'm trying so hard not to be, you know, trying to do all this stuff and just being nerdy. I don't know. I thought it was funny. And you could also put this one back in the running, hot tamale. Are you acting like a hot tamale? Are you modeling, you know, are you a fashion model or are you God's model? I don't know. Hot tamales. Who knows? Anyways, ultimately, the model we're looking for is the starburst. Who likes starbursts in here? Okay, we're going to start these around. I love the verse that we should let our light shine before men, that they might see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. A leader is someone who is willing, I'm going to let you open these. Will you open these for me? Who's willing to let their light shine, who's willing to step up and not step out of the race of life. Someone who's willing to really do the hard work of becoming a mature believer. So now we've talked about being a messenger. We've talked about that it's not just any message, it's the gospel message. We need the Holy Spirit to empower that message. And then when we're dealing with people that we want to get the message, sometimes we use imitation, right? And then we become the model, So there's all these different kinds of things that cultivate a message. But there's also things in the soil of our soul that can get in the way of the message too. So if you're going to take this on serious with becoming a messenger, I have a few things that I want to talk to you about that Jesus talked about in the parable of the sower. On day 4, we looked at the parable of the sower because there's definitely some things that get in the way of the message. And the word for message is logos in the Bible. It's that word. And so Jesus talked about the different soils, and many of you are familiar with it. There were the birds that came in and took some of the seed. There were the rocky places where the farmer was trying to sow the word. There was the sun that scorched and thorns that choked everything out. And then the fourth soil was the soil where it planted, and it reaped a harvest 30, 60, even 100 times more. So on the fourth soil, before we get to the fourth, let's talk about this, because they're not really birds and they're not really sun-scorched and all those kind of things. Does anybody remember the first one with the birds? Who takes away the logos from us? Who's taking away the message constantly? Satan. Yeah, so it's literally back to that war that I told you. There is a war going on for the soil of your soul, for this message to be planted. So there is an evil one, there's an enemy that's coming to take it from us. How about the one that fell on the rocky places, where we receive that message with joy, but then there's no root, and after a little time we fall away from it because it was a great idea, but yeah, I'm just kind of too busy for that. We fall away, and there was something that caused us to fall away. Does anybody remember what it is? Persecution, trouble. I'm going through that hard time, and now it just really doesn't work for me anymore. Oh, that really stunk. That wasn't true, because look at all this hard stuff. That's the time when the logos, we got to hold on for dear life. That's when we need somebody planting the message in the telephone pole for us, right? Because that's the time when we can go different ways. So remember that when the hard times come, that's right when the time when our roots need to go deeper. Who knows about the sun scorching and the thorns? What was all that about? What was all that? Something choking something out. Worries. Right. Okay, so how many people in this room struggle with worry? I'm just going to flat out admit it. This is a huge one for women. We're so wired to worry because I love this. The other day, a friend told me that worry is seeing your future without God in it. And it's so true. I started to stop and catch myself because I could start worrying like I don't want to, and I really know it's probably not the greatest thing, but my mind goes way out in the future. So I heard someone once say too, depression is like regretting the past, and anxiety is fear of the future. It's like way out there. And guess what? There's no God out there in worry. So the next time you have a worry, try to remember that God's in that future, and there's so many promises of His presence, of His protection, of His love. There's all these things that are surrounding you. And so the message, you can hang on to His word at that time. You don't have to let go. And it doesn't have to be choked out. Now, does that mean that we don't struggle with worry? No. Does that mean that it doesn't hurt like fire when we're going through hard times? It does. Does that mean that at times we're not going to experience like our hearts racing and da-da-da, and then we choose to hang on to His word? So it's that conscious effort of turning to really, really embrace His truth. So one of the the last days I had was an opportunity for you all to write your own message and for you all to think about this week and what you've learned and to really share an original insight. Now, I warned you, I said, hey, be prepared to share an original insight or something you've learned. And the reason I did that is because I may not have told you the end of my story. I'm going to pull up my phone and I'm going to read to you the end of my story. So this was my first blog post ever that I wrote about 3 years after my mom died. After my mom died, I searched endlessly for a letter from her. I needed to know what to do now that she was gone. Because of complications after surgery, she was medically paralyzed and I never heard her voice before she died. I never heard what she might have wanted to say. And I hoped that she had left me a written letter on a hidden piece of paper in her home with a final goodbye or maybe some final words of wisdom on how to be the wonderful mother she was to me. Devastated, I looked everywhere and I found nothing. My ritual was to go to her house, look through all of her things. Maybe there was a letter in the desk. Maybe she left me a note in her journals. All I would find would be little Post-it notes with reminders of appointments or bills to pay. I was certain I would find the words I needed to hear from her in some miraculous way, but with every failed attempt, I would end up on the floor of her closet, smelling her clothes and crying. And if you've ever lost someone so deeply, you know what it's like to be left with a closet full of clothes you can hardly bear to get rid of. These are the hidden moments of raw grief without comfort. The last day I left my mother's house, I gave up looking for the letter. I arrived home and fell on my bed. Covering my head with a pillow like a little girl, I tried to hide the sound of tears. My husband asked me, "Why are you crying?" And I sniffled out the words, "I didn't find it. I never got the letter. I never got the message. And I don't know the words of what she would want me to do." My husband is an engineer, and words are not often his strong suit. But today, God gave him the words that touched my heart into eternity. "Tracey, don't you realize you are the letter? Your mom invested in a relationship with you so that you could say the words to our children they needed to hear. She didn't write the words on a pen and paper, but she wrote them on your heart. You will say the words she wanted to say." I looked up from my pillow and stared into my husband's eyes with an insight that was straight from God. I was the letter. I was the message. I did have all those wonderful words from her stored up in my heart. I was the letter. I could still speak words of love to my family that she spoke to me. I was the letter my friends needed to hear. And Mom's voice was silent, but I could become a letter to my generation, reminding them that a mother's words matter to the heart of her child. I finally released trying to find a physical letter and embraced the unseen words written in my memory of her actions. Beneath every memory, I could almost hear the words to the letter she would have written. I saw my beautiful mother holding me as a child when I fell asleep, and I heard these words. "Dear Tracey, you have always been my beautiful little girl." I saw her wrapping gifts from holidays and making special dinners. "I have loved you with all my heart and always desired to make your life special." I saw her boarding a plane with me to go on a missions trip with cancer in her stomach. "Don't let anything keep you from serving God or others with your whole heart." I saw her holding my babies and rocking them while she sang their favorite lullabies. "Love my precious grandchildren. Be there for them in the way I was for you." I saw her tears at the diagnosis of cancer and the way she persisted during treatment. "I'll always be with you in your heart." I saw her holding her Bible, reading her morning quiet time devotionals. Never stop praying, staying close to the Lord as He will carry you through. I saw her breathing her last breath while holding my hand. "I love you forever, and I'm waiting for you, Mom." I will never have the actual letter, but I can be the letter with intentional words of love. And here's the surprise ending you may not expect. You're the letter too. Today, of all days, say the words you want people to read in the letter of your life. It's so simple to become the letter that our kids need to read or our family needs to read. But say one intentional phrase every day. Say, I love you. Say, I'll always be here. Say, I know I make mistakes. Say, God will always help you even when I can't. Say, I will never stop loving you. No matter how big you get, you'll always be my baby. Say, don't ever stop having faith in God. And say, thank you for making me feel special today. Your letter will be read for generations after you're gone, so write on people's heart what you want shouted for years to come. As we close, I want you to really take to heart what it means to have a message to share other people. What God has really done in you and through you is something nobody else can share in this world. My last little thing that I wanted to bring is, these are hilarious, Tic Tacs, Be Mine Mix. These are actually conversational Tic Tacs. And I just thought it was hilarious. I was like, I've never seen that before, and I'm so gonna bring this for the last thing because I knew I'd be crying, and I was like, I need something to cheer myself up. Nothing better than the Tic Tac mix. Okay, but I brought these because, look at this, you can just put these in your pocket. This is nothing fancy, and how many of you are sitting around other women, and if you pull out a mint, what do they want? They want a mint, right? So there's imitation. And how many of you, if you have something like this, it's something you can share. It's so little, it's so tiny, it sticks in your purse. It's nothing fancy or special, but it's just being willing to give that little thing each day to somebody else. So I hope now that instead of answering fancy questions or instead of doing more talking, that you'll use this time to really think about something that God's really put on your heart, either from doing this lesson or something that you're really feeling right now. Will each one of you practice kind of sharing your message or like something that's really speaking to you? I want to go around, instead of handing out questions, I'm going to hand out some of this candy. And if you feel like there's something that's really speaking to you, you can look at it, start a conversation with people at your ladies, but really use this time to just talk and interact. And I really pray that you all will enjoy becoming the message. So thank you for letting me share.